Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Reddit series video from the subreddit HFY called Clintstone Book 2 Chapter 1 Rebellion of Squaw, written by some guy named Ted. The link to the original will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. And if you do, please consider subscribing. Tell me again, where are we going? I asked Clint. We were flying through warp, traveling after Jem and his group of war hunters, as he called them. I still couldn't believe it. Jem was a member of the rebellion. He had seemed more like a stay-at-home and keep his head down low type of guy, rather than a revolutionary. He had changed since we'd last met him, too. He seemed harder and much more dangerous. When we had met him on Berea, he had been a tough being. He had to be, to survive that forest he called a home to hunt the dragons. Then he looked like he would have been made of iron. Now he looked like he was made of steel. I wondered what it would be like to fight him. He would be difficult to outflank with those 4 eyes, but I suppose that I could just come in swinging and overwhelm him. But he had been fast when I saw him against the Lord Fuzi, and now he was even faster. It would be an interesting fight. We're going to Aldemir, the center of the rebellion. We're going to stand in front of the Council of 6, and they will judge if we are allowed to enter the rebellion, Clint answered. How did he know all of that? I opened my mouth to ask, but the answer came to my mind. It was my 2 years traveling with him that we had wandered planet to planet, usually after some scrap of information. I had always assumed that the information had been about the Swarm Empire, or things like that. But I had assumed that because ever since Clint had included me in his plans, we had been gathering information on the Swarm Empire. But I guess if you wanted to fight an empire, you would need an army. And what better way to get an army than to join one that already hated your enemy? The rebellion had always been nearly impossible to find, even for Clint. I remembered a conversation I had walked in on before the Flowden. You don't need to find them, they find you. The black-clad figure had said. He must have been talking about the rebellion. Is that why you sent those people to the Swarm Holdworld? I asked, and then realized Clint couldn't read my mind. He would have no idea what I meant. I clarified. You wanted the rebellion to hear about what you have been doing to the Swarm so that they would come and find you and ask you to join them. He looked at me, seemingly surprised that I had figured out his plan. It had been a simple one, now that I thought about it. I don't know why I didn't see it earlier. Yes, that is exactly what I wanted. I couldn't help find them, so I figured I'd let them find me. It made sense, but I had another question. This Council of 6, they command the rebellion. He nodded. Basically, they run the command structure and make the important decisions. But the leader of the rebellion is Rolam Skawa. He makes the final decisions. Rolam Skawa. The name sounded familiar. Skawa. Why do I know that name? Skawa was a general in the Kantamar armies 20 years ago when the Swarm invaded. He fought hard, but Kantamar was defeated and their people sold into slavery. He never stopped fighting, even after the king surrendered to the Empire. He gathered up what was left of his armies and flew off into space, swearing to return and free his people. He became a beacon for hope in the galaxy for those who wished to fight the Swarm, but did not have the means. They joined his armies, and they became the Rebellion of Skawa. It was a nice story, but I could see a problem. If he's so famous, why haven't I heard more about him? The Empire does everything it can to cover up the existence of the Rebellion. Obviously, it can't get rid of the whole idea, but it can erase the details, making it hard for people to find or believe in. How do you know so much about the rebellion, then? There was no way that he wasn't making some of the stuff up. If I had never even heard of the Skawa, how did Clint know about the inner workings of the council, assuming there was one? I keep my ear to the ground, and I know the right people to ask. Why did you think that we flew across the galaxy and back 1,000 times? I was carrying thread after thread of rumor and gossip and tall tales, and I wove them together into a tapestry that revealed the truth to me. He sounded rather smug. Granted, if it was true, what he had done would make a spy master proud, but it was unlikely. Then again, he was Clint Stone, and the impossible was very likely around him. I sat in silence for a time, pondering what he had said. If what he said was true, then we were about to become part of something that could shake the foundations of the galaxy. With an army at our back, there wouldn't be much that could stop us. Unfortunately, one of the few things that could stop us was the Swarm Empire, with their hundreds of millions of hardened, disciplined soldiers. And that was another thing that worried me. Nearer they had faced the dregs of the soldiers that the Empire had to offer. They were weak and stupid, the cowards, and they had nearly caught us. Yes, they outnumbered us 50-1, but against the Empire we would always be outnumbered, and the odds would be much worse. What would happen if we faced the Guard or the Breakers? The two most feared legions in the Swarm armies were feared for a reason. The Guard had never been defeated, and it was tasked with the defense of the royal family and Swarm itself. The Breakers were the biggest, meanest, and skilled soldiers in the armies, and they were used to utterly destroy the Empire's foes. I wasn't sure even Clint Stone could take them in a fair fight. The Swarm used various horrifying methods to augment their elite soldiers far beyond their bodies, resulting in twisted abominations that could take out entire squadrons single-handedly. If there was ever a foe that could match Clint Stone, it would be those, and there were thousands of them. I was jolted out of my doubtful reverie by a sudden light streaming through the viewport. We had dropped out of warp and were facing a brilliant blue star, around which orbited a single black-tinged planet, Aldemir. I could see Jem's ship drop towards the surface, and Clint followed. As we approached, I could see that the black was caused by dark clouds swirling on the planet's upper atmosphere. The planet was completely encased by those black clouds, and they looked like they didn't move much. We dropped through those, all light vanishing as the clouds blackened out the sun. We passed through the dark netherworld and emerged on the other side. I was expecting a dark, barren swaths of rocky plains, untouched by the sun and showing not a hint of life. What I saw was the opposite. Life was everywhere. The surface was covered in vegetation and animal life all the far as the eye could see. And I could see far, as I was miles above the surface. And they glowed everywhere. The plants and the animals glowed with an iridescent light of a multitude of colors. Red danced amongst the yellow, green ran with the blue, purple intertwined with orange. It was beautiful. The surface of the planet was covered with a single enormous living rainbow, ever-changing and ethereal, devoid of light from the sun. The planet had created its own. I stared in wonder at the planet of light as we grew closer and closer to the surface. The lights only grew more and more pronounced as we got closer. Radiant green, deep blue, pale orange, vibrant red, mixed with their opposites and their complements, creating a vast painting of immense complexity. 1 minute there, the next replaced with one even more breathtaking. I could have watched this planet for the rest of my life and been happy, if there had not been things to do. Before us, Jen's ship cruised towards a mountain rising high above the plain surrounding it. It too glowed with the colors of life, a pillar of brilliance amongst the sea of light. It soon became apparent that it was not just the life of this planet that glowed, it was the planet itself. The very rock glowed with a deep, rich color of a hue that I cannot describe. While all the words of the language and every language of the universe, I could not describe this color to do it justice. All I can say is that when my eyes fell on this color, I felt something deep in my heart, a feeling of safety, of courage, and hope and love, and all the things that make life worth living. I had to use a single word to sum up this color. It would be life. This was the color of life. This planet glowed with life. The sight of it was almost overwhelming. I looked over at Clint, and I could see that he was feeling the same. I saw tears fill his eyes, and I looked away. I would leave him to his grief. I could tell this planet reminded him of his family. We flew on in silence, the mountainside growing closer, and I started to feel nervous. But Jem's ship kept flying straight, and so did Clint. It would not make sense for Jem to fly his ship into the side of a mountain, and so there must be a trick. Disguising an opening, there it was. The side of the mountain slid open and flew into the darkness. The electric lights of the dull pale compared to the lights of the outside, but they illuminated well enough. Before us was an enormous hangar, filled with ships and beings rushing all about, doing hundreds of little tasks. We were directed by a being in a high tower to land in an open space near the edge of the hangar. Clint set Susan down gently, the ship rocking softly from the contact. When we exited the ship, we were greeted by a large group of beings dressed in a pale blue uniforms, a variety of faces. The one thing that they had in common was the large gun resting in their hands. Jem pushed through the group and stood before Clint. "I will take you to the council now. They will listen to what you have to say and decide if you wish to join or not." Clint nodded his acceptance, and I mine. Jem set off in a direction that led us from the enormous hangar to the tunnel, easily 100 feet in diameter. The soldiers marched in a circle around us, 3 in front and to the back and to either sides. Jem walked behind the 3 in the front, but keeping up with us. I wanted to speak, but I guessed from the position Jem had taken, he did not want to talk. I watched the tunnel as we walked down it. It seemed perfectly smooth on all sides, the walls and the roof. The floor was flat from wall to wall and rough for traction, and the ceiling snaked along the metal tube with which hung lights, illuminating the tunnel. Whatever made the surface glow did not seem to extend below it. My feet found easy purchase on the rough surface as we walked for a long while. The floor had a slight downward slope to it, and I marveled at how far the ground level we must have been. Here and there other smaller tunnels branched off from the main one, symbols scratched into the walls around the openings to guide your way. I couldn't read any of them and assumed that they were some sort of code. Clint seemed to be doing the same as me, observing the surroundings. We cut left suddenly and traveled down a side tunnel. The cut of the tunnel changed from smooth to rough as we walked, happening so gradually that I hardly noticed it as it no longer reflecting the light. The soldier boots clanked onto the stone floor as we marched down the tunnel. We came to a stop before the polished steel door set deep into the rock wall. "Wait here," ordered Jem, his eyes darting about that fascinating way that they did. He raised his hand and knocked twice on the door, and entered. We waited patiently outside the door, surrounded by soldiers. I gave them a glance over, deciding how I would kill them if they attacked. First order of business would be getting a weapon. The Guan with the twitching antennae looked like he would be the easiest to subdue. I would lunge for him, break his neck, and take the gun. Then I would get my back to the wall so that I couldn't surround me. And then, "Come with me." Jem was back and we were moving past the steel door. The tunnel changed from a tunnel to a large chamber, rounded, with one wall hollowed out 5 feet above the floor, serving as a dais with 6 large chairs, placed in a semicircle. 6 beings filled those chairs. On the left was a grey Biowa, his eyes wet and unblinking. Beside him was a Guan female, tall and thin-necked. A large cantum filled the next chair, and I guessed that there was a Scour. He was older than I thought he would be, but he had been leading the rebellion for 20 years. His silvery hair covered his face in a light fuzz, characteristic of a male cantum. His golden eyes flashed in his face as he studied us. The being in the middle right chair was a fat, bald Maronch female. To her right was a strong-looking Wraith, seated in the pose of a military man. But it was the being on the right that drew my attention, face as red as it had been when we had last parted. Cerberus sat in the rightmost chair, staring in fury at Clint. Clint stared back, not in fury. He looked puzzled to whom this counselor was and why he was so angry. His face lit up when he remembered. Clint gave him a smile and said he remembered exactly why Cerberus was mad at him. Scour looked at Cerberus and cleared his throat. Cerberus broke his stare and Clint looked at Scour. Scour shook his head and Cerberus seemed to lose little of his anger, or managed to get it under control. Scour turned to Clint and spoke, his voice deep and rich. "Welcome to the Council of 6. You have been brought here to determine if the rebellion will accept you amongst them." Clint interrupted. "You do this for every one of the beings that wishes to join the rebellion, because this seems like it would be a full-time thing." "You will be silent when the general speaks," snapped Jem, standing at the edge of the room. Scour raised his hands. "It is quite all right, Jem. He is curious. Curiosity is not a sin unless one is too curious and doesn't take heed of the warnings of his betters." Jem seemed embarrassed, but with his hard features I couldn't tell. Scour spoke again. "To answer your questions, no. Most beings stand before a small group of lesser officials and present their story. But some beings are special. They make it necessary for the council to get involved. You two are such individuals. You have made quite a name for yourself as violent and merciless for those who cross you. But for those you help, you are amongst the innocents of the galaxy. You are fierce protectors. The list of your deeds are too long to recite here, but the short of it is, you two are exactly what the rebellion needs." "That is why you are here," the Gwen said, her voice high and shrill, filled with clicking accent of her birth tongue. "You will tell us why you wish to join the rebellion, and we will judge you if you have the true resolve to join against the Swarm, the scourge of the galaxy. If you succeed in this, there will be 1 or 2 more trials, let's call them. Be warned, if you do not pass them, you will be left to die out in the wastes. You know where we are and what we look like. It would be nothing personal." Cerberus looked like it would certainly be personal. I do not know why Clint was not upset at this being who had sent bounty hunters after us, who had nearly killed us. I was angry at him, but because Clint did nothing, I did nothing. Clint stepped forward. "You know who I am. I have fought injustice across the galaxy, and I have fought the Swarm. I have always won. There is not much that I can add to this, other than think on what you know of me and what I have done. I wish to join the rebellion to erase the horror of the Swarm Empire and remove the stain of slavery. I was a slave myself for a year, and I do not wish that on any being. I wish to join the fight and the injustice done to the galaxy every day. The Swarm do nothing to stop it, and the fact encouraging it. I would see this injustice stopped. I would fight and defend the innocents from the monsters who fight in the name of this emperor. I would fight to save the children and to spare the lives of the millions that will die under the rule of the Swarm if we do nothing. This is why I would fight." It was a good speech, and I could see it had affected several of the councillors. Gwen and the Baywa, the others looked thoughtful. I thought about what I was to say, but one thing drew my attention. Clint was not mentioned the murder of his family as a reason to fight the Swarm. I wondered at that, but realized that Clint was a private being, and his family was a private affair. "What do the chancellors say?" asked Scour. "I say aye." "Aye," said the Gowan. "Aye," said the Baywa. "Aye," said the monarch. "Nay." The heads of the council chamber snapped towards Cerberus, who sat in his chair with a smug look on his face. "Nay?" the Baywa asked. "He gave a good argument. He said that he would fight for the innocents and for the slaves. He spoke the truth. I can see it in his eyes." "Nay," Cerberus said again. "He said he would fight, and I am afraid that this is all he would do. Clint Stone is a creature of base instincts. He seeks what gratifies him. Fighting is one of those things. He does not wish to join because he wants to help anyone. He only thinks of himself." I could see Clint's face grow tight with anger, but when he spoke it was calm. "I do not seek the base pleasure. I truly just wish to face the Swarm and make them pay for their crimes." "Bah! The Ruth, you're a fighter. It is all that you'll ever be. I can see it in your stance, in your eyes." He must have been an ally of Cerberus, because the rest of the council did not seem to share his sentiment. Clint drew a deep breath and unclenched his fists. I noticed for the first time he wore a glove to conceal his metal limb. "I do not wish to fight. I fight for a reason. I fight to save those who cannot save themselves. I may be a fighter, but you'll need fighters in this war." Cerberus sneered. "Of course we'll need fighters. But you are a fighter who would lack conviction. You would fight, and then, when fighting is too hard, you would leave and abandon those who counted on you." Cerberus was entering into a dangerous territory. I knew Clint thought that it was his fault that his family died, that he had failed them. If Cerberus continued down this path, Clint would become enraged, and he thought of his family. "You doubt that I have conviction to fight this war? You want my conviction? I'll give it to you." He raised his hand and he pointed it at Cerberus. "Do you still have your daughter? Is she still alive? Can you hug her in your arms and tell her how much you love her?" Cerberus nodded. I don't. The swarm took it from me. Clint pointed his finger at the Wraith. Do you have a wife? The Wraith nodded. I don't. The swarm ripped it from my arms. I had a son that killed him in front of me. But that's not enough, right? I'm sure there are plenty of beings in this rebellion who have lost their family to the swarm. Clint's voice grew harsher and angrier with every word. But I'm different. Clint looked at each counselor in the eyes and stared hard at Cerberus with his time came. The swarm didn't just kill my family. They killed my entire fricking race. The humans, every last one of them, are dead. You want conviction? I'll give it to you. I am the last human, the last son of Earth. The billions of souls murdered by the swarm cry out for vengeance, and I will give it to them. The room fell silent, quieter than a grave. Not a single being so much as blinked. I was thunderstruck. Clint had never shared that with me. I knew his family was dead, and I had seen the madness of the deaths it brought. But his entire species was gone. Clint was more alone than any being in the universe. I couldn't even begin to imagine what that must feel like. To know that after you, there would be no more like you. This was a much deeper than being the lost to your family, where after you died, your bloodline would be gone from the galaxy. If that happened, at least your species would still go on. When Clint was gone, the human race would cease to exist. Everything that they had done, their great works of art and music, their sacrifices that they had made, their struggles that they fought so valiantly, would be meaningless. All memories, all experience of mankind would be erased from existence. There would be no remnants of the artifacts they left behind, but it would be a shadow, a whisper of what was once there. The husk would remain, but the life would be gone. I could not comprehend the depth of loss that Clint must feel, or the responsibility. He was the last human, the last son of Earth, and he was the only one able to bring justice to his race. While I was lost in my ever-darkening thoughts, Clint started to speak again. I did not hear the beginning, but the rest was clear. I listened, as did the rest of the room, to his hushed voice. Listen closely, because this will be the only time that I speak of the death of Earth. Listen as I tell you the lives we lived. End of chapter. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider subscribing. If you wish to support the author, there is a link to the original story, so pop over there and give him your support. If you wish to support this channel, however, there are a few ways to do so. The best and easiest would be to share this video with other people, as well as liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. All of these things tell the algorithm that this channel is at least vaguely interesting, and that may share it with other people. If you wish to support the channel in some other manner, watching my other videos would also help tremendously. Or, if you really like, there is a link down below to leave a tip, or to join the Patreon. Any and all support is very much appreciated, and I hope that you all have a good one until the next time, and I'll see you then. Cheers.